Hello everyone and welcome to today's Sunday tea time live stream. I'm here in my library, thought I'd start off here for a change. And these streams are just a chance for me to work on drawing and animating in OpenToonz and Tahoma2D, and for you guys to join me to offer your suggestions and maybe learn a little something. And I also like to share a little bit of news or animation information that I think you might be interested in. So do settle in and enjoy the stream. And do come say hello in the chat. Let me know who's out there today. It's nice to know who's there and what you're all up to. I had a bit of a late night last night, so I think we're going to have a shorter stream than usual. I haven't got a lot to get through today, which is quite nice and quite fortunate. But last night I stayed up late to watch the Eurovision Song Contest. So that's kind of the question for today that I'm interested in. How many of you have heard of the contest? And how many of you have it showing in your countries? I'm not quite sure how far around the world it's shown, but thanks to Will Ferrell and the Eurovision film from about a year ago, this time last year, it was on Netflix. I think a lot of people have now heard of it that hadn't heard before. So if you want to share that in the chat, let me know who's come across it before. So let's just see who's there in the chat. And to do that, let me pop it up here on my screen. There we go. So who have we got? So we've got LOL ACC Lolak. Hi there, welcome to the stream. Good to have you with us. Tom, here as usual. Great to have you here. And Maria, always the early bird. Good to have you here. And Serjan, welcome. Glad you made it back. Thank you, Maria. I'm really pleased with how it's coming along so far. There's still plenty more to do here on the library, but I think we'll pull that together over the coming weeks. How much time have we spent in OpenToonz? Well, me personally, lol, I've been using OpenToonz for possibly 3.5 years or so, since just after it was first released as open source software. So I've been sort of here from the very beginning. I know some of these guys here have been around for a couple of years using it, but I'm sure they'll fill you in over on the chat. Okay, Tom, only from a Discord. Yeah, it's not widely known outside Europe, which is quite interesting. I mean, it is obviously well known in Australia because they've now joined in the competition. Ashnan, hello again. Welcome back. Good to have you with us. And Tom's had your second COVID shot. Excellent. That's good news. It's really good news. I think the vaccines are doing really well. They're really spreading around the world and plenty of people are getting them. Still a long way to go, but I think we seem to be on the way for getting this thing sorted. I'm from England, lol, in the UK here. About 6 months, Tom. Yeah, I guess it must be. Time flies. Time flies. Yeah, I've had my first jab. I had that about a month ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I had the sore arm. But I also had a couple of days of feeling a bit off because I had the jab on a Saturday, and some of you that were here at the time will know I had some side effects on the Sunday because I did the stream still in the afternoon, so I wasn't too bad, but I felt a bit off, like I got a cold. But then on the Monday, I felt really poorly for the whole day, and that cleared up by the Tuesday, really, really quick. Yeah. Okay, excellent. So we've got 6 concurrent viewers at the minute, not too many. Hopefully a few more will join us soon. It always takes a good few minutes for the first few people to get in and for people to settle down. Yeah, Maria, you've been working really hard on the birthday cards and other animations, which is great to see. I've said it before and I'll say it again, it really is. I wouldn't say they were really awful, but I will say that I certainly noticed an improvement as you spent more time with the program and spent more time drawing and animating. And I think you said yourself you felt the improvement as you've learned more about the program, more features, and just fell into a bit of a routine of a good workflow of how to work with it. That's a good question, Lol. I'm guessing you're watching this on YouTube, so you know I've got a YouTube channel. But about you guys up in the chat, do any of you have YouTube channels to share your work on? Oh, that's interesting, Tom. Is that a new plugin for Perspective, or are you working on the current Perspective plugin and amending it? Because the current Perspective effects node kind of works, but it's tricky to use, as we saw last week. So if you could work on a Perspective plugin, that would be really good for it to work smoother. That'd be really good. Yeah, same here, Maria. A bit grey, a bit wet through the past few days. Hopefully the weather's turning around now to come towards summer, because here in England, we've just had an opening up of all our services of pubs and shops, gyms, public parks, that kind of thing. So hopefully it'll open up even more. As I say, the weather will turn nice, which would be great to get out in the parks and to go visit places, go out for meals, that kind of thing. Thank you, Lol. If that's to me. If not, then it's a thank you from whoever you're aiming for. Actually, the editing program I use for editing my videos is called Shotcut, and it's a free to download and free to use video editor that I've used for the past 3 years for editing all of my videos. It's got plenty of features. It's got all the features that I need in there, and you may have noticed in some of my videos I use them with the occasional zooming in or moving, adding the camera around. I use green screen for some of the effects in there. So yeah, it's really, really good. Okay, Lol, thank you. Thank you. Just reading Tom's comment about the Perspective plugin effect. It'll adjust the vertical depth ratios on the image. Oh, the thing we talked about before, where if you use the 3D layout to place things on the Z plane, so it could automatically work out how to blur them if you focused entirely on the front object. And then perhaps as you move things in 3D depth, it'll automatically apply that blur to them so it looks more like a natural camera. That would be amazing to have. That would be really good. Yeah, Shotcut's really good, Lol. I'm a huge fan. I tried 2 or 3 video editors when I first started, and since then I've tried a couple more, and they've all felt a bit bloated, a bit too large. One of them used an actual database to store the data for the video edit, which meant that I couldn't easily get a backup copy of it. And being a bit old-fashioned, I didn't quite trust having it all in a single database. Shotcut saves as a file on disk, and you can move it around to a different folder. As you work on the project, you can take backups, and it's all on disk in kind of a text file. So if something goes really wrong, you can actually jump into the text file and edit it. And I've had to do that a couple of times for not something going wrong, but when I've moved my files to a different location on disk. That it's easier to go in the file sometimes and edit the path to where the new files have moved to. That's really, really useful. But yeah, it works perfectly for me. I love it. It's a great little program. There are some features I'd like to see added in there. I'm sure there will be at some point. But in the whole, it does everything I need. Yeah, the Perspective tool will be great. So if you can share any teasers on that, Tom, as you work on that, that'd be great to see as it comes through. Panicle, welcome to the stream. Glad you found me. Good to have you here. Thank you. Well, I'm glad you found me again. I'm glad you're here. I'm still producing tutorials of varying sorts, as well as sharing some of my small animations and other tips and news about OpenToonz over on the channel. So yeah, do keep an eye on what I'm producing. I'm about to change things a little bit, I think, in the next few weeks, in the sort of videos I make. After chatting with a few people here on the channel and on the stream, and mulling it over myself, I want to try and produce a few shorter videos, some snappier tips videos. So rather than 10 and 15 minute epic tutorials where you follow along or you watch along as I'm doing something, I want them to be much snappier and within 60 seconds or 2 minutes be able to demonstrate a small feature of the program that'll help you kind of pick up your pace of learning in detail different features. So I'm looking forward to doing that. I don't use Blender at all, lol, and I'm not intending to in the near future. I have considered trying to use some sort of a 3D tool. I think it would be particularly useful for backgrounds, whether they're moving or static. I think it could be useful, but I've not so far. So no, I won't be able to provide a Blender tutorial. Hey there, Wanted. Good to have you back. I saw you commented earlier before the stream was live. I was quite busy earlier, so I couldn't reply back to you, but I saw your comments in there. So it's good to have you back with us again. And I've got my usual Jack Skellington mug from The Nightmare Before Christmas. There he is. Lovely jubbly. A lovely cup of tea in there. So what are we up to today then? So first I want to show you a couple of things of what's been happening last week, things that have caught my eye. And then I've got 2 jobs I'd like to work on as part of finishing off the study here. And you'll see more of that when the screen comes up in a few minutes, and we'll chat about that. So a couple of things, as I said in this job, in the title of this stream, to do with the plastic tool and cutout animation. And it's basically to create 2 new characters to sit on my shelves here in the study, one of which is currently directly behind here, which we'll see a little bit later on. Kronos, hello there, good to have you with us, buddy. Good to have you here. Yeah, there's a lot to learn of Blender. I think you need to start off really simple. It is about donuts, boxes, primitive shapes, learning to put them together, and then grouping them together, adjusting and manipulating how they look, finding a good workflow for how to put them together. It will just take a long time, I think, to work through it. So unfortunately, as I say, I don't have the time for that. Good luck to you if you're working on that. There's a lot in Blender, and it's a really capable and useful program. Absolutely. Yes, I agree, Mazzle Dazzle. Welcome to the stream. Very dry. That's a great way of putting it. There are, I think, part of the problem about Blender is it's so complex, a little bit like OpenToonz, that the tutorials will necessarily be dry, because you will just have to learn, what does this drop down do, what does that feature do, what happens when I tick this box. So you've got to work your way around all of its tools and features, I think. So a lot of the videos will be quite dry. If you can find a teacher on YouTube that you like, that you can get on with and understand the videos, stick with it, give it a go. But yeah, I'd love to see what you produce, Maria, as you work through that. And I'm quite happy to understand there'll be very simple at the very beginning of things you produce, but do share them. Love to see that. Right, I'm running a bit late. Let me check I've got everything. I've got one of my pens here. Hopefully that's working okay. Yeah, that's good. So, what did I want to talk about what's happened this past week? Let me quickly go through some of that. Well, first off, let's start off with last Friday's video. Here we go. And it was a video slightly different to my usual ones, and it was based on what I'd worked on during a previous stream from a few weeks ago. So when I was working on a background or a room to use here on the streams and share in OBS for when I take a break, it's a kitchen scene. I wanted a countdown clock on the oven to show how long was left of the break. It was just a little side project I wanted to do, but it felt like something that I think could be quite interesting to demonstrate a few features about OpenToonz and Tahoma. So I created a little tutorial that I shared in the live stream, and then what I intended to do that I finally got around to this past week was I edited that down into a much shorter, more focused video that I could share last Friday. So it was a bit of a speed paint showing what I did and a voiceover over the top describing how I created it. And it was 30-45 minutes in total creating it on the stream, brought down to about 7 or 8 minutes of a video on Friday. So if you're interested in knowing more detail about how I created it, or to watch the pacing of how I created it, then you can check out the live stream for full commentary and to watch exactly which commands and features I used to create that effect. So this is something I thought I'd try out during that stream that I might do again in the future, and I think worked out quite well, where I was able to present a larger feature, to take my time working through it on the stream, but then use that video footage later to create a more condensed video. So you might see some more of those in the coming weeks as we're working here on the streams. Hopefully you can join me for those. What else has been this past week I wanted to share? Well, there's a couple of things that I noticed from other people. So Malang John did a submission. He was talking about doing this a few times. And he's created, enhanced the audio support in Tahoma. And we won't see this until the next release of Tahoma, unless he releases an intermediary or a nightly build. And it basically, in that, you've now got support for 32-bit audio tracks, whereas before it was just 8 and 16-bit. So a common question or request was, how can you... people try to import an audio track and it doesn't work. It shows up as a single frame rather than as the full audio track spread across the timeline. And this should fix more of those requests to work properly. So he's added lots of support in here. I'll let you read the details if you like. There's a link down in the description to this. But this is absolutely fantastic. Again, it's just expanding out from what we've currently got running in Tahoma and OpenToonz. And hopefully this will be ported over to OpenToonz at some point as well, so you'll see that in a nightly. And the next thing I wanted to share is somebody else's video, Ferdinand Englander, who you might know as Animator Island TV. He released a video this week about using keyframe interpolation in OpenToonz. And he basically showed you how to set up a very simple animation, how to use the animate tool, that's the tool at the top left here, and then how to add keys and edit those keys using the function editor. This is a request to get quite a lot of how to use the function editor, how can I edit keys or animations easily. And he's gone through quite a lot of that information here, so it's very much worth taking a look at this video in particular, but also the rest of his channel. He shares videos about general animation, about specific software including OpenToonz and Tahoma2D, but also just he works with animation and you see him animating on some of his live streams and in videos, so it's definitely worth a follow, and again, link down in the description for that. And that's just about everything I wanted to cover for this week. That's everything that really caught my eye that I wanted to share. Just going back to the chat now, what I missed a second ago. Lowell was asking how much time it takes to make a professional animation in OpenToonz. It depends, like a lot of things, on exactly what you want to create and how much time you want to put into it. So it's how much detail you want to put in there, if you're doing frame by frame or cutout or something else with a plastic tool, importing pictures you've drawn on paper, and how long you want your videos to be. So I can't really give you a good answer apart from saying get in there yourself and give it a go and see how long it starts to take you for the kind of animations you want to create. Thank you, Jim P. Welcome to the stream again. Absolutely, yes. So in the video for the countdown clock, I actually created it counting up just for simplicity at the beginning. So I created the 10 digits, 0 to 9. And to make it easier, I created digit number 1 on drawing number 1, digit 2 on drawing 2, through to 0 on drawing 10. So when you looked at a timeline, I could see exactly which drawing was visible. And then I just duplicated, used a couple of the repeat commands to create the units for the seconds, the tens for the seconds, units for the minutes, and the tens for the minutes. And depending on your circumstance, you can use that technique to create any kind of clock you want, whether it be a 24-hour clock, a countdown, a stopwatch for, say, if you've got an event at the Olympics you're making an animation about, you might want a stopwatch with like tenths of a second or whatever you like. And I thought it'd just be kind of a flexible way to show how you can use repetition with very few drawings to create a more detailed animation. And a countdown clock is just a very simple thing. It's not something you'd see from Disney, or it's not impressive, but it's more functional, and that's what I needed for the kitchen scene, as you'll see at the break time. And as you say, to make it count down, I literally played it backwards. So if you watch that video, at the very end, you'll see I created one scene of the clock on 5 different columns, saved that out in its own scene, and then in a separate scene, I imported that as a sub scene, which is a sub X sheet in OpenToonz, and that then creates a single column just for that whole animation, and it showed the numbers then, the frame numbers from 1 through to 1200 or something, and I just right clicked on them and chose to reverse the frames to get the countdown working. Hey, K-Light is here. Hello there. It's going well for me. How's it going for you? So yeah, it's a very simple exercise, and again, just a bit of fun to get this little countdown clock on the animation break, and also to show a few things about using the timeline or X sheet. Absolutely, Tom. 32-bit. It's something that I've seen the question answered so many times, where people are saying, I've put an audio clip in, it didn't work, and it's always because it's 32-bit, and then you've got to ask them to convert it to a 16-bit, which is always difficult to do. Not everyone knows how to do that. And why should they have to? Why can't they just import it? Well, now with this fix, they can. Just alive. Hopefully that's good news. It's good that you are alive. Hope you've not had any kind of accident recently. So let's pop away the screen. Let's put that up. Bye for now. So today, I want to work on 2 things I said earlier on. One of them is this guy here, old President Nixon, head in a jar. So he's from an animation I made over a year ago for the American Independence Day. And it's Nixon from Futurama. And in that, I had him speaking and saying Happy Independence Day. And I've taken the animation from that last week and put that into its own scene and started to put this together to have him sitting on a shelf during these live streams. And what I want to do today is just change the timing a little bit to slow him down so he's not doing too much to catch your eye. He needs to really be sitting there in the background, not getting your attention. So I was going to slow him down, move the frames around a little bit, and use the plastic tool, as we've discussed already, to have him moving very subtly in the background. And there was a peculiarity about this animation that's playing now, and it's very short, so it's on quite a short repeat cycle, in that I turned his head round to face the other way using the animate tool, but when I rendered out that animation, it turns around and then flips straight back. So there's something wrong with that, so I'll try again today, and if that doesn't work, I'll just leave his head facing one direction. We'll have to see how that goes. Thank you, Mazzle Dazzle. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I'm really pleased you are. I tried to make it as extensive as I could, and to make it as useful as I could. In fact, one of the complaints has been, I've had very few complaints about the course, but one of the complaints has been that I showed too many features in detail. But I think to be able to get the most out of the program, you really need to have that detail there at your disposal, so that you know what feature you need and you can reach for it easily. So it's the old expression about, if the only tool you've got is a hammer, then every problem is a nail. And some problems are screws, so you need to learn how to use the screwdriver or some other tool. So the idea is to share as much as I can for the features that I think you'll find most useful, so then when you get to that situation, you can step in and use that feature. So thank you for that. Well, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. Hopefully, in the next couple of weeks, I'll be getting back to the Futurama project. I have spent the past few weeks, month and a half or so, working on small projects here for the stream. So I've got the study here we've worked on over the past couple of weeks. Prior to that was the room that you'll see at the break time, a kitchen scene with a little bit of animation and things in the background. So I've been doing that to try and get these streams looking a bit more fun, ready for working on larger projects. But as I say, in a couple of weeks, hopefully, I'll get back to that Futurama project, and I'll be testing myself out, drawing the rest of the characters, animating them for that introduction for the fan film that you've probably already seen that you're talking about. Yeah, it's really easy when you're working solo on learning a software to not quite grasp everything, to misunderstand how things fit together. So again, I'm really pleased the course has been helpful for you. I really am. I've had so much good feedback from the course. It's been really reassuring to know that people have found it useful, and they're now producing animations of their own. So, as I always say to everybody else, please do share your drawings or animations over on the Discord server. You especially, Mazzle Dazzle, but any of you guys. It's always good to see them. Always good to share them for other people to see what we can do in this program. And one or two of them you'll also see on the walls in the kitchen at the break time, which is another reason for putting that together. So let's nip through to the drawing room and let's start work on these next two projects. Okay, before I do anything, I'll take off the chat because it always gets in the way and I always forget to take it off. So let me hide that first in here. But I can still see the chat over on my spare screen, so do keep chatting, sending over any questions you have about what I'm doing or about OpenToonz and Tahoma in general. And just to chat amongst yourselves about anything that you see here or about anything that you're working on. And before I start, let me just set off this little background video with my little friend popping up here and there, and to let you know about what the channel's about. So what do I want to do here first? So here's the project with President Nixon's head, and if I just hit play, that'll go possibly a little slow, but that's not too bad there. So you can see a few animations I've made of him blinking. He looks around a little bit. He makes a few shapes with his face, with his eyes and mouth. And then I have him trying to turn around to face the opposite direction at the end here. and then I was going to repeat it, do the same again, but facing the opposite way. We'll see if we're going to do that later on. So the way I did this, it's worth pointing out that I've got all of the pieces for this animation broken up into separate levels and shown on separate columns, with the head made up of quite a few pieces in a subscene. So to step into that, you click on any frame in that column, then press this button to open a subscene. And now I can see all the contents of that subscene shown as separate columns. And the way I like to think about subscenes is, if you're used to using a computer where you save files in your My Documents folder, you might create a folder to store related documents together. So you might create a folder for your spreadsheets, or one for files to do with your work, or perhaps some DIY or a certain project. So this is kind of the same thing, where I've got a folder of his head, and inside there I've got his mouth, pupils, eyes and head, and this other column to organise the direction of which way he's facing. And then this is all collapsed down into a single subscene. And the way I like to work with subscenes is, in the subscene I like to create all the separate animations without the timing where possible. So each frame is a separate drawing in effect, in the same way as you create a separate drawing in a single level. And then when you step out to the main timeline, you can then organize the timing of when you're going to show those drawings. So I treat this column as a single drawing, as you'd find in the level strip. So here we're showing drawing number 1, or frame number 1 from the subscene, and then frames 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 to show him blinking, and then a large gap before the next set of animations over there. So I need to adjust the timing because he does quite a lot quite quickly, and one of the ways I will adjust the timing is using a command in the scene menu, insert frame. I've added my own keyboard shortcut, Control Insert, insert a frame, and that inserts a frame not only in this column but all columns at that point in the timeline. So if you've set up all of your columns to match what you want to do, as you insert a new frame, all the columns are extended, or if you use the remove frame option, are removed, and it keeps all of the columns shown at the same time right through to the end of the animation. So I've got 2 seconds of a gap here. I'm going to increase that a little more, so I'll press Control and Insert just to push this to the right hand side of the timeline here. The exact timing isn't important. I just want to slow things down a little bit so that you don't see too much movement in the animation there. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is a blink, then there's another gap for another blink. So again, I will extend that to slow it down. And before I go too far, I'll start my regular routine of pressing Control S to save the scene and all of the drawings. So Lol is asking about the zooming and panning. What is it you'd like to know that I can help with there, Lol? What precisely are you interested in? Is it zooming and panning on the viewer, where the drawing is, or on the timeline, or elsewhere? And in what way can I help with that? Okay, so second blink, and then we've got then the next set of drawings are him looking around. So again, before he starts looking around, I'm going to just slow that down by pressing Control Insert and moving everything to the right. In the viewer. Okay. Well, in the toolbar at the left hand side here, you can see these bottom 3 buttons, and therefore zooming, you want that in your exported video. Right, so it's not about controlling it to move around like this, to pan around. You mean you want the camera to move and pan? Is that what you're talking about there, lol? Would that be right? So again, I'm just going to insert a bit more time between each of these movements here, just to make it a little bit more subtle. So he's not frantically looking around, he just looks around a little bit, as though he's thinking about something. And here. Using control insert really is a quick and efficient way just to insert extra space and help sort out your timing. Yeah, so as you say, is it for the render, so it's the camera you want to zoom in, or just while you're editing you want to zoom like that? So do you want to render a video where it zooms, or is it just while you're drawing and editing on here? The last bit of a movement of the eyes, and then he gets all excited. Again, a bit more time there. And the reason I ask lol is because different people mean different things with these kind of questions, and I know some people sometimes struggle with, while they're editing, how to move around the screen and how to zoom in and out, rotate, that kind of thing. And other people want to zoom in the camera, move the camera around, and then perhaps a third set could be moving the characters around, not the camera. So it depends kind of what you mean and what you're after there. So again, I'm just inserting some space while you're chatting, building that together. Yeah, his eyes are moving, he's excited, looking up. There's a gap, he looks down, there's a gap. Yeah, feel free, Mazel, to put in some of your suggestions there to lol. But basically, I think you're talking about moving the camera or the characters, and there is a subtle difference between the two into what effect you want to get. Because if you move the camera, perhaps if you think about zooming in, if you've got the character here and the background here, as you zoom in, the whole thing will zoom in at the same pace. So you won't see a difference between where the character position is and the background is. And you might want a little bit of parallax for that. And for that, you want to use the Z-axis to actually get the two drawings separated, so that when you zoom in and out or move around, you see the background moving slightly different to the foreground there. But basically, to do that, you just have to go into the camera column here, which is at the bottom of the timeline, and then it's using the animate tool at the top. I don't know if you've used the animate tool elsewhere. Thank you, Maria. Absolutely right. He does this quite a lot, this kind of thing. So yeah, please do. If you can share a link to one of his videos, or to his, you might not be able to share links to his channel, then that would be good. If not, then lol, if you search for Blended Planet on YouTube, and you'll find his channel. But the way you can do it, as I say, in OpenToonz or Tahoma, is to use the animate tool and then choose what you want to animate. And for zooming the camera in, you choose scale. So if I get the camera in the middle there, so the camera view is the white box here with the red outline. And with scale selected for the animate tool, you can just click and drag to get the scale you want to show. So I'll start off with the camera quite wide there for Nixon's head. And then you move forward to where you want to stop the zoom, and then you zoom in or out to the right size, and you can change the position, show the right thing. And now if we go back to that first keyframe and show the camera view, so I scroll through those frames, you'll see that you zoom in the position that I set in those two keys. So it really is pretty straightforward to do once you've had a go and once you've started working with it. If it goes wrong, hit undo, or just click on the key till it turns blue and press the delete key. And you can just start again. So don't be afraid to get in there and have a go at doing that. But that's with animating the camera itself, but you might prefer to animate the characters, which gives you a little bit more control. So you do the same thing by going to the column with the character on, and you can change the position or the scale again, all these other items in there. I can zoom the character to be closer to the camera, which is a bit like the camera going forward, but you can move the background and other items in the scene at a different pace, give you a different kind of feel for how it looks. So yeah, do jump in there and have a go. That's the best way to learn about the Animate tool. Okay, where are we now? So that's right, so he's moving his eyes, he looks around with his eyes very wide, and then he closes them down. And again he looks over and pulls a face, so let's just space that out a little bit. Yeah, it really is pretty straightforward lol to use. Experiment with it, have a play, hit undo, delete the keys, start again, don't worry about that, and change between the table view, they call it, the camera stand view, where you can see everything that you've laid out on screen, and the actual camera view to show what you'll see within the camera. And that'll make it easier to switch between the two views to line up quite what you want in your scene. So I'm going to extend drawing 20 there. So we get like half a second of where he looks over, and then he'll pull his teeth. And then the drawing before, I'm going to copy that and paste that to drawing 14 after here, and do the same thing again. So he pulls his teeth there, and then I'm going to press the Q key, turn this drawing, which is drawing 21. All of these are going to be drawing 21 because the number doesn't change. And on the final one, I press Q, and that brings the drawing number down to drawing number 20. So I can organise the timing. So he just looks over there. He then shows his teeth for a short while, which I'll extend slightly, and then close his mouth again, but it's still looking in that same direction. Maria, that is the top tip that I forgot to mention. Absolutely right. Just hit save before you start playing. Absolutely. And if things go wrong because you've set the keys in the wrong way and they don't make sense, you want to start again. If you can't remember how far you've changed things, or your undo system falls apart, or you can't remember where to undo to, you can just reload the scene and it'll load back to where you last saved. So if I make a change here, for instance, I'll do that now. So I'll hit save. And if I make a change, I use the animate tool. Let's change the position, and I've moved the head out of the way, and maybe I've moved something else over here, put him up there. So I've got this crazy animation, and I've gone, oh no, what have you done, Darren? Where do I undo to? Which keys did I just add? You can not worry about it if you press save at a good position. Then you can just go to the file menu, and you can either hit revert scene, which rolls back any edits you've made and reloads, Or if you prefer, you can just open recent scene file and it'll be the top item to reload. Discard your changes you just made and then let it reload, and you've now not got those crazy edits that you just made a second ago. And this is where I was before. So yes, do hit save before you go practicing too much, and perhaps practice with a smaller project before you get to a larger one that's really important. Absolutely, Maria. Learn best from our mistakes. That's exactly what we do. Okay, so he's looking over there. Then I want him to go to 14 again. So I'll insert some more space on that. I'll copy this drawing to the end of frame drawing 20. Add a bit more spacing. Space out 20. And then again, have him do his his funny mouth shape here. Don't want 14, so I can just delete that, click and drag that block back to the left. And 21 is where he's pulling his, 22 I want is where he's pulling his teeth up. So those 21s I want to be 22. The easiest way for me to do that is to highlight them and then press the W key. And that changes those two drawings from 21 to 22. And if you've not used the Q and W keys yet, you'll find them in one of these menus. And I'm sure somebody here will tell me what it is before I see it. Here we go. Under Cells, Drawing Substitution, to move the current selected drawing or drawings forward or backwards, one drawing at a time, which is really handy for drawing replacement. If you've filled your timeline with drawings, you can then just highlight a couple of frames, press Q or W to scroll through the drawings you have. Okay, so he's looking over there, then he pulls a bit of a face with his teeth. Again, I'll extend that over to last a little longer. And then I want him to bring his teeth back in, but his eyes can stay there. So that should be... Oh, it crashed. Good job I saved recently. So again, let me go to my start menu. I'll restart it and load it up again. This happens from time to time, so do save often. Up to Homer again. And then we'll get back sorting out this timing. And let's say this part of what I'm working on, it is just the timing really I want to work on to get it looking as a subtle bit of animation. So let's see where I got to. Scroll to the right. Here we go. Recognize drawing 14 there. Right, so let's try again, see if this works. Let's highlight a few frames, and now I'll press the Q key. Let's see what happens. And that goes down to drawing 21, and again, down to drawing 20. That is the one that follows 22 there. His eyes don't move. Again, I'll insert some frames to let him hold that pose. Yuli Check, good to have you here. Late as usual, at least you're here. Great to have you with us today. What did I do to crash? All I did, Kronos, was I selected on the frame and I pressed either Q or W to change the drawing. I've done that 1,000 times, and I've even done it early today, and you've seen me doing it a couple of times already. These things just happen. Some things in OpenToonz and Tahoma, you can do something that you've done 1,000 times and it will make it crash. So do save regular. It can't be stressed enough. Okay, so he looks over here, and then again it's another blink, so I'll extend that. I'm going to copy that blink again. So drawing 1 to 6, copy that and paste it just here. Oh, I've got 14. Don't need that. So I'll select 14, press delete, which leaves a gap, and I just click and drag anywhere on the top bar of this right hand section. It'll bring that whole right hand section back to the left there. So blinks, blinks again. Bit of a gap in there, so let's just select on the frame here and press Control Insert, shuffle them over, hit save. Then what's this? That's just him looking around again. Right, so this needs some spacing here, so I'll press 7 and 8 are his eyes moving in the same direction. So I'll extend drawing 8 by sitting the current cursor position on drawing number 8 and pressing Control Insert. So that'll add more drawing number 8 to the right here, or at least frame 8 from the subscene. So he looks down there. Then drawing 9 is a look up. So that again is a single drawing on its own. Let's just space this out even more. Hit save. Then drawing 6, where it's looking towards us. Ooh, okay. Then we've got an ooh. In fact, let's make this shorter. Drawing 9. Looking at us for 6, I'm going to highlight some of these and change these to drawing 9 by pressing W. W, W. So he's looking to his right, then at us, then back to his right, and then says, ooh. And then he closes his eyes and looks to the side. And I've got these animation keys here for trying to turn his head around. Me too, lol. It's just one of those things to get used to and to not get too upset about. So it is just save regularly. And really, if you've not saved regularly enough, it's kind of your fault for not saving it when it crashes, because it will crash at some point. It doesn't crash anywhere near as much as it used to, but it does do it. I've worked for a week or two without any crashes, and then you can run like today, and we might get a few of them. So just save regularly and just learn by your mistakes to keep remembering to do so. The layout changed. Well, the layout is different. The layout of the rooms is different, Kronos. You say the tools weren't the same. Which tools do you think aren't the same? Some things look different and the layout of things on screen, but all the tools are there and should do the same thing. Old files are compatible. You should be able to load 1.4 files into Tahoma. If you was going to do that, I would recommend you take a copy of your 1.4 OpenToonz project folder to somewhere else and rename it possibly with Tahoma in the title, then load that into Tahoma, because when you next save, it might save some features that aren't compatible to go back to OpenToonz. So try and keep them as separate projects where possible. But yeah, it should work fine. Which things didn't work for you, or which issues did you have, out of interest? Let me go to the animate tool and take a look at the keys we've got here. In fact, let's bring up from the panels menu the function editor, and let's see what values are actually in the head column. So click on the folder, and if I right click and choose to show animated only, that'll reduce the columns that you get to see. And it's around drawing or frame 987. Let's change this, and because they like to try and keep showing the same frame number, we'll move back to frame number 1, and now if I move one of the sliders, they'll keep in sync with each other. There we are. So 987, so I've got the scale at 100, which is basically means is 100% in one direction for the H scale. And then by changing to -100, it flips to the opposite direction. Okay, and then the small movement of X and Y. So that's kind of what I expected for that. Okay, Kronos. This is one of those times where it's best to share a screenshot over on the Discord. But whenever anybody's talked about the erase tool not working, it's always been because of options on your toolbar and misunderstanding level types and what they can do. So it depends what level type you're doing and what options you've got set up here. So if you was on a Toonz raster level in OpenToonz, that's a smart raster level here in Tahoma. It depends if you've got lines or areas set for erasure. If you're trying to delete just lines, but then you're colouring over where there are areas, it won't delete. You've got to select the right type. The type of eraser, normal is same as a pencil eraser, you have to rub to delete. And the other types are for drawing a large area. And also there's a frame range option. So it depends which options you've got set up there. And whenever you ask questions about things not working as you expect, a full screenshot shared on a Discord server is the best way to find out the answer, so that we can all see the options you've got set on screen. But yeah, almost definitely it'll be the options you've got set. And perhaps you had different default options set in OpenToonz that have always worked in one way, and if it comes to Tahoma, so different things could be set. Yeah, normal and lines. So, and you're trying to erase lines and they didn't erase. The next thing perhaps is the selective option, which means you can only erase the selected colour in your palette. So yeah, if you can share a screenshot, and if you want to do it while we're on the stream, I can take a look at that over in Discord while we're on the stream, and we can see what the issue is. Okay, so he's facing to my left, screen left. He starts to turn. I'm trying to think how I need to do this. Let me zoom in so I can see the numbers easier. Goes to 32, then 33, 34, 35. Let's step into that subscene, and it's drawings 32, 34 around there. Let's see what happens. So, I've got the direction changing in the subscene as well. I think I'm doubly changing that. So I don't need to flip the direction until after we've gotten to frame 38. Yeah, frame 38. Let's step out again. If I select the first key, hold Shift and select the second key, I can then click and drag those keys to frame 38. So if we look at these first drawings, he closes his eyes and turns to the right. And then after that, I need to adjust the position so he sits in the same place. And I can see a small jump there. So if I zoom in, choose the animate tool, he moves down. So if I move him up a little bit, and to the right a little bit. I can do that here by clicking on the X. Right, I'm going to move it too much if I do that. Let me hold the Alt key. You see this little widget appear next to the cursor, and that means you're moving it a tiny bit at a time, and that's the best way to move it, just a little bit, holding Alt and click and drag. And then we'll flip through the two drawings. Alt, bring it back. If I zoom in, to make it easier, as I flip between 993 and 994. That'll do, perfect. Zoom out, hit save. Great. So then I extend drawing number 1. And I can put in more animation there from facing the opposite direction. I think I've already got some of. I'm going to just reduce this down a little bit. Change the size to get more frames on the screen. I still want to see the numbers. Makes it easier to see what you're doing. Again, a couple of blinks. A little bit of looking around. Extend drawing 8. Bring this down here. I'll put that onto 2s. Same for these others. Move his eyes a little slower. And again, this is all repeated from earlier of him opening his eyes wide. This is going to be quite a long animation to render. So I won't render it during the stream, I'll render it later on after the stream and we'll see how that comes out. And then I'll put it into OBS. So next week, when I come to the study, you'll see it's working. Again, let's just extend this out. Hit save. And keep adding some frames. And this is just the frame by frame part of the animation. There's also the plastic tool, which I'll do in a couple of minutes. And that'll just be used to move the head backwards and forwards a little bit as he looks around and does things. Again, just to add a bit of life to the character as he moves. And I think what I'll do is I'll quickly run through this. So we can get to the next stage of using the plastic tool, which will be quite interesting to see, I think. The plastic tool I've already created of when I used the animation last time. And you can probably see it there around his face. Okay, then we've got a little blink again, the old standard spacer that you get for character, so they don't look like they're frozen and dead. Bit more looking around. I'm not too concerned about that one. I might remove that. Got the ooh. His eyes looking down there. Remove those two. Bring this back and extend drawing 8. So he looks down. Does that and then back to here. And let's bring in the jar and the head mesh in the front of the jar. So we've got the timing all working there. And if I click on the final frame and extend that, the last thing I want to do is to turn his head back in the other direction. We'll do that by changing these drawings. If I in fact copy and paste from the last set, that'll be a better way to do it. So I'm going to click on the first drawing, shift and click on the last drawing. I can do that without clicking on the key. There we go. Control C to copy. At the end here, Control V to paste. Again, let's extend the other drawings around that. Don't need 24. Close his eyes, starts to turn, then opens his eyes. And then, if we go back to drawing 1, yes, that joins up now back to the very beginning. So I'm going to leave that here and delete all the other frames. So we've got the end of the animation, which is frame 1641. If I just see how long that is going to last. Opening the calculator app, just out of interest to see how long it lasts. So 1641 divided by 24 frames a second gives us 68. Yeah, 68 seconds, so just over a minute of him moving around and doing some small movements. So let's make sure that's saved, and then we'll go back to the very beginning and let's look at the mesh level. I've switched to the plastic tool, and we've still got the plastic skeleton that I created last time that's imported. So if I choose the animate mode, I can now experiment on frame 1 to make sure the skeleton is correct. And from what I can see here, that looks perfectly fine. I'm not going to move the bottom part of the character. I literally just want him moving backwards and forwards, which is this top key here at the top. So I need to make sure I don't move his head outside of the jar. And to get continuity from the last frame back to the first, we want the head to be in the same place for both. So if I right click on one of the nodes, I can choose set global rest key, and that puts all the keys back, hit save, to where they are, where they were when I first created them. So the drawing is in its original state. So at the very end of the animation, I need to remember to add that same key in, and then you won't see the join as it cycles round. So let's hit play and see what happens here. So he just sits there, and the first thing is some blinking, I believe. So I'm going to just create another key by right clicking and choosing set global key, and that will set a global key of this current position, and then over a number of frames I'll just move forward 12 frames there, half a second. He's already leaning back against the glass, so I'll bring him forwards a little bit. And now if I press play, that's it. You see him lean forward in half a second. And then I'll do the same again. I'll add a key there by right clicking on one of those nodes. So I was thinking a second. And because I'm using the plastic tool, this is one area where I know people have lots of crashes, and I have myself. So we'll see how this goes. And in fact, before I go any further, I'm going to open an Explorer view in another window and take a copy of the scene, because the scene is where the keys are stored. for the plastic tool animation and for the animate tool positions, and also the drawing numbers shown on which frames. That's all stored in the scene file. So if I go to where the project is stored, called Nixon in a jar, and go to, if I bring that down so you can see what I'm doing, go to the scenes folder. I've got the Nixon Toonz file there, which is the scene file containing all of those keys and drawing numbers. If I just hit copy and paste on that file, I've got a copy and I can rename it and call it before adding plastic tool keys. So if anything goes wrong, I can roll back to that Toonz file and start again adding the plastic tool keys and see where we get to. I saw that, Tom, as well. I saw that conversation. I do remember using that myself. So if I leave the cursor in the middle here, hold Control and Shift, and then middle mouse wheel, you can see I'm scrolling down through the frames. And because I've set my zoom control here, I believe is the middle mouse wheel scroll. If I hold Control and Shift there, yes, I can now scroll through the frames using the slider on the side of my tablet. So yeah, that's a useful tip. Right, okay, because I've mapped my button on my pen to the middle mouse button so I can do easy panning. I think that's what I did. So if I hold Control and Shift, same for me. I can also scroll. It's quite slow. Thank you. That's interesting. That, yeah. I'll have to have a bit more of a play with that to make sure I've got the right button set and it works okay for me. Yeah, I did see that conversation, but didn't do anything about it. So it's quite useful to see. So where are we then? So he moved forward. That's right. Then I want to add another key before he blinks. So I'll right click and set a global key. So he doesn't move anywhere until here. And then again, I'll have him leaning back towards the edge of the glass as he blinks there. And let's keep adding a little bit of movement. And we'll see if it's too much. No problem, Kronos. No problem at all. It's just a common thing that if things don't seem to be working as you think, then the options bar at the top is definitely the first place to look. Really check that it's doing what you think it's doing. I think in my last stream I mentioned it, that when I start a new session for a stream or just to work on a project, as I pick on a new tool, so I go to the brush tool or what have you, and I'm on a level I can draw on, I have a quick glance across the options bar at the top, because the last time I was using the program, I may have used it in a different way. So I may have set the brush to be extremely large and to always draw overall or underall or some other option, and I may have forgotten that in between sessions. So it's worth checking as you go to the tool of what options are set at the top of the screen. Yeah, not everybody, Maria, likes to use buttons on tablets for some reason. Personally, I do. I've got 10 buttons I can use and a touch bar I can scroll up and down. And I could do with 20 buttons, 30 buttons to be honest, but that's what the keyboard's for. But some of the most popular options are here. So save, undo, obviously we all need that. Full screen mode. Then I've got some tools of the selection tool, control point editor, brush, and erase. So some of the common things that I'm using all the time I have mapped. And I often keep my left hand on my tablet as I'm drawing or doing something, so I can quickly click undo or change between the brush and the eraser. So it's worth doing, but if you can get to your keyboard easily, why not? That's fine. It works, as long as it works. Let's move these keys along to the right to where we're about to blink. So he moves forward, and I'll have him moving a little bit more there. Okay, and then he sits still. Then he looks again, so again we'll add a single key here, global key. Let's do it directly before. And I want him to lean back and then look. So again, drawing 8, let's insert some space here, because that's separate from drawing 9. He looks down, he leans back, looks down, and then he looks up. So just before he looks up, again, we'll add a tiny bit of movement here. We'll set a global key, and then a very quick look up there. So let's see. Fine, just a little bit of movement as he goes. Yeah, sometimes, Maria, I'll move my keyboard to my left to be directly under where the tablet is, so I can easily use my left hand on the keyboard while I'm doing something. It depends what I'm up to. But yeah, if you've got cats that like to jump on the desk, you've got to be careful where you put your equipment. Sure have. So again, we've got another little look up, so I'm going to add a global key here, followed by another little bit of a movement up. And be careful not to move his head out of the jar. And then he looks over at us, so again, let's set global key and then a slow lean forward as he looks to us. And I'm going to put drawing 11 on 2 frames, so it's a slower, slightly slower look over. With this kind of animation, you could easily add some more joints into the skeleton to adjust his face, so to bring his cheeks backwards and forwards, and perhaps make his ears move a little bit or what have you, to add some interest to the puppet. But for me, I just want him to move around a little bit as he's in his jar there. Magnus, so can you share a link? Have you tried to share a link? Yes, it's Blended Planet, not Blender. We're going to have a small one here again. Right click, global key. Shame there's not a button on the toolbar here. I can add. There may well be, you know, there may well be. Let's just double check on the naming. Let's try and do that. Set global key, set global rest key. Right click on the toolbar of the timeline and choose Customize Quick Toolbar. Bringing that command list. And the search for global. No, just a standard global key. Let's put rest. No, so we can't map those 2 commands onto a toolbar command, which is a shame. Let's have this again, looking forward a little bit. If I turn on the onion skin, should be able to see where he was before. No, it's not showing that. Okay, so turn that off. 430, brings forward a little bit. I want him to keep going sort of in a slow motion for a tiny bit. It goes quicker and then slower at the end. Let's see that. Make this much slower by extending it out. Fine. So it's looking surprised here. So again, let's add a global key there. And see, look surprised. We want him to lean back here like this. Give it less time to move. Right, so it's a shocked look where he moves a tiny bit. And every time he looks, I want him to move a little bit, so I'll add a small bit of movement there. And he is kind of going into the thickness of the glass at the side, but there's not a lot of space for him to actually move with having such a big head. I could have possibly made the jar larger to make this, give him more movement, but he is kind of how he is at the minute. So I'm happy that it's got enough space to move a little bit. So then I'm going to look down. So again, global key. I'm looking forward a little bit. And then he becomes less shocked. Again, I'll move him forward a little bit. So let me add a global key. So there's no movement between those two keys. And again, bring him forward. Let's see that little section. Yeah. So it goes forward a little bit, and then a bit more there. Okay. So almost halfway through this. His eyes again are going down, and then he's sort of done a growling. So we'll add another key, and again, let's move him forward that little bit. Small bit of movement as he sort of growls. Looks up. We'll have him leaning backwards again. And it's just a matter of moving him a little bit at a time. To give him a feeling of movement as he's putting his faces and sitting in the jar, doing things. Move this some more at 699. Hi there, Wanted. When you say the skeleton tool is hard to use, in what way do you find it hard to use? I think like a lot of things, it's just a case of practice and using them. Because, for instance, the skeleton tool over here, that button there, I hardly ever use. I've used it from time to time, but I find that difficult for me for selecting the right part of your skeleton to move. But that's what I'll be doing in my second project after the break. We'll see how that goes. Again, just a little bit of blinking action, so he doesn't need to do much. But in between, I will move him a little bit. Global key. And let's have him just, again, looking back a little bit. Yeah, so it's a slow process, not necessarily exciting to see. And until I actually watch the animation later, I won't know if I've got this right. So I might need to make some small adjustments. And you might want to adjust exactly when you do these kind of movements for this kind of animation, so don't always have the same timing of the same number of frames of the movement, because it will start to feel robotic. And even though your viewers might not necessarily spot that you've used the same timing, you'll get a feeling of how it looks. Oh, I see. Wanted, yeah. Yeah, sometimes parts that you don't want to move with other parts. That's right. And again, it's just a case of practice, getting used to how to build a skeleton and how it works. And to know that the skeleton tool or the plastic tool doesn't work for all situations, for all drawings. So for instance, you can see here, I've been moving the head backwards and forwards. So let me add another key here, this drawing 6. I'll right click and add a global key. Go a few frames later, I'll hit save. And as we talked about earlier, whenever you experiment, hit save first, so you've got a save point to roll back to if it all goes madly wrong. So a few frames after drawing 6, if I move him a lot to the right, you'll see that his neck at the bottom here, where the collar fits, doesn't move at all, because I've got these 2 other keys, or 2 other nodes at the bottom. So by adding those nodes, it keeps the joint of the neck on the collar. If I hadn't got those, then they would distort out of place and would look peculiar. So yeah, so it is a case of just getting used to how to use the tool. And sometimes it still surprises me where other parts of the character move that you don't intend to. So this one, he wants to move backwards a little bit. And then forwards a little bit. So again, a couple of frames after, I'll set a global key. We'll paste these out here a little bit. Then after, he comes forward again. So that's moving too quick, so I'll spread them out like that. In fact, in between those, if I select between the keys and between the drawings, if I use my control insert command, you'll see that both the keys and the drawings are adjusted in time, not just the drawings. So that's a really useful command for helping with all kinds of timing. Yeah. Then he looks down and gives it the old ooh. I'll have him moving down again. Then he turns around. So let's just add in this turnaround. It's funny you mentioned Skelly, Maria. I'm guessing you remember from last week, but I'm going to be looking at Skelly after we're finished with this today to try and bring him in ready to go into the study as well. So we'll see a little bit more of the basic skeleton tool working later on today. So as he turns around, rather than having him just statically turning from one side to the other, if we add a bit of rotation using the plastic tool, it can feel a bit more natural. So if he leans his head back first and then turns around, I want him to move his head back, start to turn, bring that rotation back to the center, and then down to the front, and then back. So before frame 24, so the last thing he did was he went forwards. I will extend that timing a little bit. I will also extend timing of frame 24 before he turns around. So there's a small pause where his mouth goes back to normal. Let's add a little bit more timing. And then again, on the mesh level, we'll add a global key here to set the start position for the movement. I want him to lean backwards. And so again, just keep on adding timing, gaps in there, so he leans backwards. And then as he blinks, I want him to lean kind of forwards a little bit. Let's see that. Right, so from here, I'm going to add a global key. I'm leaning forwards there to the middle, so bring him back sort of to the center there. And then from the center, move those keys over. To 37, I want him leaning backwards the opposite direction there. Then I'll have a global key, and then slowly come back, kind of a neutral position. So let's see how that kind of looks. There's only a subtle bit of movement as he turns around. Okay. And then back to again, hit save, a little bit more spacing, a bit more blinking and moving of eyes. And I'll move the head a little bit, and that'll be this one just about finished, I think. So in the middle of here, we'll add a global key, bit of a small movement forwards, blink, and then he looks down. So again, we'll add small movement going forwards. Just quite subtle. And when he looks up, he will move upwards. Space out before his eyes move again. Slow down the movement afterwards. Let's hit play. So his eyes look up, but the head still keeps moving. And it's that kind of extra follow through afterwards that makes it feel less robotic. You don't want him to look and have his head move at exactly the same timing. When I was animating him the first time, I sort of fell into that trap a little bit. I tried that out, and it just looked robotic. Didn't quite look natural. So sometimes I had him moving first before his eyes looked up, and then moved afterwards. And sometimes I had a bit of movement in the opposite direction before he started to move. And different things worked at different times, but definitely not moving his head at exactly the same timing as his eyes. So here where he looks backwards, again, a couple of frames before, there's a global key, and just a tiny movement to the left. This is one of the great benefits of the plastic tool. It takes very little to add this extra bit of movement to the head that stops it being quite so stiff. And sometimes you want to add a lot more movement to really show the intent of what you're trying to do. And other times, just a little bit of very subtle movement. Again, looking forward, the global key. I'm intending to put a different timing for each one. So this is one frame before his eyes move. That I set that key. And again, let him look surprised. So for the surprise, his eyes kind of go large and he's still looking straight forward, but I think we'll have him moving backwards. And don't forget, you can move the keys afterwards, so the exact timing isn't really important. You can always change that. So again, once I've added the keys, I'll hit save and just hit play and see how that looks. Yeah, that's fine. So he's just looking up, he's acting surprised, and his eyes are going to dart around a little bit. So again, we'll just add a tiny bit of movement each of those. As he looks up, he leans back. So for this one, let's have him leaning back before his eyes move. Let's see. I want to move the final key a couple of frames afterwards, I think. Yeah, so still moving as his eye looks up. Good question. How do I put the plastic tool movement on 2s to match the rest of your animation? I believe the plastic tool now takes note of the setting in your preferences, animations section. So where you set the default interpolation, if you change the animation step to 2s there. So if I put 2 into that one, now when I add a couple of keys, let me open up from the panels menu the function editor. And I'm on frame 1375. So again, it tries to keep them in sync. So if I go to frame 1 for both of them, and then go to 1375 where I was before. Okay. So if I look at the values between the keys here, I can find the one that's moving. Here we go. You see them changing on every single frame, so they're on 1s. So if I add another key now, a number of frames later, just change that. That will also go on 1s because the previous one was. If I go to one more later and then add another key, this should show if it worked or not. Yep, you can see this is now on 2s, so it moves every second frame. So it's an important point to know about when you change the value in the animation section in the preferences, that it only affects future keys when you add them, and it only affects the key between the keys that you add after you edit it. So I edited it, I'd already got a key set which was on 1s. The next key, that interpolation will still be on 1s, even though I've changed to 2s because the previous key was set. But then the following one will then take note and add them on in 2s. So yeah, the animation section of the preferences is where you set that up. Let's change this back to 1s for my animation and close that off. If I delete those 2 keys, now it'll continue adding it in 1s because this previous key here on this frame was already set up to use 1s. So that works, those settings work on the animation tool as well as on the animations for the plastic tool. So I hope that helps. So he looks up and then he looks down. So again, a couple of frames before, I'll add a global key. Let's have him moving a little bit before and see how that looks. Yep, that's fine. And then he goes back to his usual frowny self, and his eyes come back up to the center. So again, a couple of frames before, we'll add a global key. Good, thank you. I'm glad that does. And bring his head back a little bit. Yeah, it's a really good question, that, and something that some people kind of ignore sometimes, and they'll put it to one side thinking they can't change it. They'll have the rest of the animation on 2s, and then they'll use the plastic tool or the animate tool, and that'll add your animation on 1s by default. It doesn't quite look right somehow. You can't necessarily tell what's wrong, especially if you've got, say, the background sliding past, and your character's feet kind of slip on the floor as they walk because they're drawn on 2s. So you want the background to move on 2s at the same timing, exactly as you said. Okay, so moving towards the end now. So as he looks down, guess what we're going to do? Add the key and have him looking down. Hit save. And the next thing is he pulls his silly face. So again, I'm going to extend his movement so he comes down a bit further. Let's do that quite slowly. So quickly moves, then slowly moves. Once I've got this basic timing for the animation, I'll probably render this out today and then see during the week how it looks. And I might edit it during the week to change the timing and have it ready for next weekend, or I might look at it next weekend to adjust the timing further. But I think we're going to be kind of just about there. And next weekend, incidentally, I'm not 100% sure when I'm streaming. It won't be on Sunday because I've got a birthday to celebrate next Sunday for Mrs. T. So we won't be here on Sunday. So I might do the stream on Saturday or Friday evening, or might skip a week. So if you're not already, do subscribe and click the bell so you're notified of when I'm next going to stream. And that's my tea just about gone. So I need to consider taking a break soon, I think. Let's just have a small bit of movement as he bites his teeth here. And then we've got some more blinking, so let's just have him having a bit of life in between. Just moves a little bit, blinks. Let's bring that closer. The blink there. Thank you, Maria. I'll pass on your best wishes to her. Small bit of movement. And yeah, okay, so when he gives it the old ooh, let's have him leaning back a tad. Bring these back. Again, trying to adjust the timing. That finished before he says ooh, so he leans back. Yeah, just the timing between each movement, so it's not exactly the same for each. And then we've got a bit of a head turn again, so let's just try and get that right. If I extend these drawings to make sure we get everything shown right up to the end. So let's go a couple of frames before. We'll add a global key. That back a bit more. You can go forward a bit. Give it a couple of frames where it's static, and then you can start to come Oops, start to come back. Extend that timing out. Quite slow, so I'm going to speed that up by pressing Control Delete to remove a few frames. Let's get 3 out. He leans back, and then as he starts to turn, I'm going to have him go back to the center. A little bit too far. If you remember, I said at the beginning that the position on frame 1, I'd use the global rest key. So I want to moving back to that global rest key up to the final frame. So if I right click on the final frame, if I right click on the skeleton and choose set global rest key, he sets his position exactly to where it is on frame 1, so you won't see a change in the movement there. And that'll just adjust it between those last few frames. So that's the final part of the movement. Let's see basically how that looks with the preview. If I go to the preview settings, I've got a shrink of 3, and we'll hit the preview button. That'll open a new window. Before I do, I'm going to close that. That didn't save first, so let's hit save before it starts to preview, because previewing again is one of those times where it can crash, the same as rendering. Let's hit preview and see where that gets to. I see we've got a few more people joined us on the stream. So if you've not yet said hello, do come say hello in the chat. Let me know who's out there. So it'll take a while to get started for previewing, and we'll see how slowly this goes before it is ready for preview. So I think what I might do, as I'm getting this preview ready, is I'm going to take a short break. And now grab myself a quick fresh cup of tea. We'll see how this looks, and then we'll move on to the next part of the project, which is building Skelly for putting onto the shelf in the study. So I'll see you right after this break. Ah, how about now? I bet we've got a sound now. I've got a feeling that's sorted that out. Simply, I was muted from the break. I'd not unmuted that. So is that back, everybody? Just keep an eye on the chat over here for when you let me know we're back. How is that? Can you hear me? Okay, so still no sound. Hopefully it's going to start coming through soon. AMB? Listen to AMB, really? What's he up to today? I've not seen him for a while. What's he doing? If you can hear me. I can see the on my other screen I've got the video showing of the stream, and that looks really slow. I'm not sure what I can do to speed that up. So anything coming through yet? I'm looking at my settings over here, and the microphone shows that it's working. And then that's coming through. Yes, we're in, we're on, we're back. Are we back? It looks a bit slow and clunky for the picture. That's still coming through really slow for some reason. So something's using all of my internet. I'm not sure what that is. OBS is struggling a little bit for some reason. I'm just seeing if there's anything I can change on there. Yeah, thank you. Thumbs up, 100%, good all around. Whew. So we're back. So we'll keep going for a while. Let me know if it slows down too much or if we lose the sound again or anything else. Fantastic, Tom. Good. So let me see this preview. I've still not looked at it yet since I got back. So let's see if it's too much movement or how it looks. In fact, let me hit the repeat play. Struggling to play at the right speed here, even with a 1/3 size. Let me make sure we're on 100% by hitting reset view, and now try. That can make a difference. So again, he's just going to sit on the shelf in the study, so he doesn't need to attract your attention. So I want him just to be doing a bit of movement to show that he's alive while he's sitting in his jar on the shelf there. So I can kind of feel the movement between, or the pacing between each of the moves is fairly even. So he doesn't move, he waits a second or so, doesn't move, waits a second or so. So I could do a pacing that out, I think. Great, thank you, Heather. And you can hear my keyboard, Tom. Then the sound is fully working. How about you, Alexius? Over on Twitch, can you hear me? Is that coming through okay for you? I know the video is showing like it's struggling a little bit. We'll see how that continues. OBS is using quite a lot of the resource there. And this always seems to happen after a couple of hours on the stream for some reason. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. I don't think that's too bad. I need to put in some more spacing. So I will do that. And I'll probably do that off stream, to be honest. So let me zoom out fully, get rid of that, go back to the beginning, and I can add a little bit myself here. In fact, if I scan through by dragging this under the viewer, see the movement as I'm going through the animation on the timeline at the same time. I need to find the right spots to put in some extra space. So where he looks up here, before he comes back down, there, I want to add some more space. So I'll just hold Control Insert and push that along a couple of seconds. And then hit Control S to save it. Blifton's here. Hello, Blifton. Welcome to the stream, buddy. Glad you got here. Good to have you with us. And he looks forwards and then left. And then before his eyes open, I don't need that key in the middle. That does nothing. He leans forward and then he gets surprised. So again there, I'm going to add a large gap by pressing Control Insert and just holding that just to let him move along for a second. And then Control S to save it. And keep moving. We get surprised. Here we go. We get surprised. And then before he looks any further, again, I want to space that out. Because that all happens very quickly. He gets surprised, he looks up, he looks down, he looks left, he looks right, he moves. It's a bit too much, I think. So I need to just steady it down a little bit. Again, after he looks up, space that out. Then he looks down. And then before his eyes go small again, let's push that back. I'll keep pressing save so I don't lose anything. Let's see where we are. And then at his natural pose, that wants to pause for a while. The actual animation is likely to be, say, 2 minutes long or something in total, which is fine. And I'll render this out. When I do render this out, I'll use the shrink option to give me a smaller file because it's going to sit on the shelf. It's quite a small sized animation. So if I render them out full size to be HD, the full size of the screen, as you can see he is here, and then reduce them in OBS, that gives OBS a lot more work to do. So the less work I can give it, the better. So I'll make that much smaller. And I rendered it out, I believe, with a shrink of 4. So it was a quarter of the size last time. And that wasn't far from the size I need in OBS. I'll do a couple of experiments by rendering out a section of, say, 10 frames. Doesn't need to be much. Try it at 5 times shrink or 6 times and see which is more appropriate. Because the nearer to the right size that it is, the less work OBS has to do and the less that it'll crawl when we're doing the stream. So it shouldn't slow us down as much. We don't want it to. I've got quite a few animations running together, so I need to be careful of what I have running at once on what size it is. Thank you, Blifton. That's good, because he's supposed to look like Nixon. So, so I was hoping he would look a little like him. If you don't know, he's based entirely on the President Nixon character in Futurama. One of my favourite cartoons. You'll see more of that in the coming weeks. Again, space this out before he turns around. Big gap here. Blinking. Let's see that. Looks down. Then he looks up. And again, before he looks around, let's just extend that out. Because he's supposed to be stuck in the jar, there's not a lot happening around him, so he's not excitedly looking around. He's just taking his time, relaxed, looking at the scene. As I say, he is supposed to be in the background, not a foreground character. So I may experiment with this over the coming weeks, just to see how it sits in the background. And as I'm doing the streams or working on something else, I'll see how it looks to get a feel for if I've got the timing right. Now the basic timing's in here, it's easier to adjust, as I'm doing now, to make things last a little longer, or to speed them up, or to remove parts of the animation altogether. We were talking earlier about Blended Planet. Has anybody here heard if Dave is planning to stream this evening? I may join him later on if he is. Absolutely, Blifton. I was really pleased with how this came out. When I first did it a year and a half or something ago. Yeah, really pleased. And this is kind of one of the reasons I made a video a little while back of my top 3 or top 5 tips for drawing. And I'm nowhere near an expert or in any way feel I've got a lot to offer in drawing tips, but the tips that have helped me are what I shared in that video. And it's doing projects like this that came out successful that persuaded me to make that video, because they're tips I'd read or seen in other people's videos, and I found them so useful. With the first one being to do sketches, lots of sketches, a couple of sketches for your characters first, adjust them at the sketch stage, and then get to the inking stage later. Don't jump into the inking stage too soon, because I found myself doing that. And by working through the sketches and adjusting at the sketch stage, I found my characters were looking more like I wanted them to, because I wasn't hitting the mark straight away on the first time I drew characters out. But then by just resizing them a little bit, making certain parts of them larger, smaller, adjusting the position of the ears or the eyes, quite quickly you found that you could get your character looking how you wanted. So that's why I made that video, to share what I found useful. And hopefully some of you found that useful too. I think that was the one where I drew SpongeBob SquarePants. And again, as I was drawing him, I found these tips were really helpful for me. I got to the end of that drawing, I looked at it and I thought, yeah, that's right. And I felt proud that I'd done a good job. And the same goes for Nixon here. So there we go. That's a bit of extra timing added for this. So now this lasts for 2,500 frames. So again, let me pop a calculator and just see where how long that'll last. Because the last time I looked at the timing, it gave us 68 seconds, just over a minute. And the time, or the time it lasts, isn't that important, but the shorter the time for the repeated cycle, the more you'll spot it and recognize the repeat. So 2481 divided by 24 frames comes to 103 seconds, which is over a minute and a half, less than 2 minutes. So the time's extended quite a lot. So that's the basic timing for that. I'll render this out after the stream. I'll see how it looks. I'll amend anything that's obviously wrong, and I'll pop it into the study. So if I go over to the study now, and you can see where Nixon is now over here. So he's already on the shelf, but he's doing his quicker actions. So when I render this out, you'll see next week how he looks different to here. And it's the same sort of movements, just with different timing. But I've noticed then as well that by changing to that scene, my OBS used a lot of the resources. So I need to be careful I don't put too much into that scene. So again, I'll be using the shrink option judiciously to try and get the right size animation. So the one last project I wanted to start today before I left, and ideally I wanted to finish by 6 PM, and it's 5:15 UK time. I've got a few things I need to do this evening, but let's start the project and see how far we get. So I wanted to create a new project. I'll create it in my stream folder, so in my OpenToonz folder, but all my OpenToonz projects are kept. I've got a stream projects folder. I'll choose that, and I'll call this project Skelly on a Shelf. We'll create a small animation, a very small animation of the Skelly character to sit on the shelf in the study. So let me create a new scene. We might create 2 or 3 of these. I may come back later and change how he moves and how he looks, and I would do that in the same project. So I'll create a scene name that matches what I'm after. So this particular movement is going to be him just swinging